The plane was packed. The noise was unbearable. A 9-year-old autistic girl was screaming uncontrollably, and no one knew how to help, not even her mother. Passengers were angry. Flight attendants were panicking. Then, from the back of the plane, a boy in scuffed sneakers stood up and did something that silenced the entire cabin. It was supposed to be a normal flight. But then the screaming started. It was a clear afternoon when Flight 478 took off from Atlanta, heading toward New York City. Among the passengers boarding the aircraft were families, business travelers, students, and in first class, Rachel Whitmore and her 9-year-old daughter Ava. To a stranger's eye, they might have looked like any typical well-off family traveling comfortably. Rachel had on a tailored blazer, designer travel tote by her side, and eyes behind expensive sunglasses that told a story of exhaustion, not from work but from life. Ava, clutching her stuffed bunny with one hand and tightly gripping her mom's fingers with the other, walked hesitantly down the aisle. Her eyes darted under her long bangs, absorbing every movement, every sound, every unfamiliar face. Ava Whitmore wasn't just any 9-year-old. She was the only daughter of Jonathan Whitmore, a tech entrepreneur whose apps had taken the world by storm. He built a fortune out of code and curiosity. Yet, despite all the money, luxury, and high society connections, nothing had prepared the Whitmore family for the reality of parenting a neurodivergent child. Ava was born with autism spectrum disorder. She was high-functioning, yes, and could speak fluently on topics like dinosaurs or astronomy. But her mind processed the world differently, louder, brighter, scarier. She didn't like unpredictability. Couldn't tolerate sudden noise or unfamiliar textures. And crowds? Chaos. Rachel had carefully planned every aspect of the trip. Pre-boarding for extra time, noise-canceling headphones for takeoff, downloaded videos of Ava's favorite cartoons, even an emergency kit with stress balls and sensory toys. Ava was doing well, quiet, focused, calm as the plane began taxiing. But the moment the engines roared to life for takeoff, everything went wrong. The pressure changed, the rumble, the chatter of the passengers around them, it was all too much. It started with Ava letting out a single small whimper. Then her lips trembled. Rachel tightened her grip, whispered, "It's okay, baby. We're almost there." But it wasn't okay. Soon Ava screamed, sharp and sudden, startling nearby passengers. Her legs kicked under her seat. She clawed at her headphones and flung them aside. With tears now streaming down her face, her small hands flapped uncontrollably, and her body rocked back and forth. The other passengers reacted the way most do when they don't understand. A couple across the aisle rolled their eyes. A man in a business suit muttered under his breath, "Why bring a kid like that on a plane?" Another sighed loudly, shifted in his seat, clearly irritated. The flight attendant approached quickly, her voice kind but strained. "Ma'am, is she all right?" Rachel was trying her best not to lose it. "I'm sorry. She's autistic," she whispered, half apologizing over Ava's cries. "She's having a meltdown." The flight attendant nodded, but the concerned looks from nearby passengers didn't stop. Whispering began. Side glances. Judgment. Rachel hugged her daughter tightly, rocking her slowly. She pulled out sensory tools, tried playing her favorite cartoon, even softly sang the lullaby that always calmed her at home. Nothing worked. That's when he noticed. Several rows back in the narrow economy class section, a boy, about 10 years old, sat by the window quietly watching. His name was Malik Johnson. He wore a slightly oversized hoodie and scuffed-up sneakers that had clearly seen better days. He wasn't traveling for leisure or luxury. His mom had managed to secure the cheapest tickets she could find so they could visit his sick grandmother in Harlem. They were from a small community in Macon, Georgia. Life hadn't been easy. Malik had grown up with very little, but had learned how to observe big things with a quiet soul. From the moment Ava boarded, he noticed her. Something in her reminded him of his cousin back home, who also had autism. He recognized the hand flapping, the difficulty making eye contact, the way she clung to routines. So when she began to scream, Malik didn't react like others. He didn't roll his eyes. He didn't judge. He just sat forward, alert, concerned. "Stay seated," his mother whispered, sensing that familiar eagerness in her son's body. But Malik didn't respond. He couldn't look away. Not because he was scared, not even because he felt sorry, but because he felt connected. He knew what was happening. And more than anything, he wanted to help. From several rows back, behind the curtain separating first class from coach, Malik searched for something, any way, to reach the girl and ease her panic. That's when an idea, a memory, flashed into his mind. A trick his grandmother once used when he was little. A calming beat. A soft rhythm. A tune you don't just hear but feel. He glanced at the tray table in front of him, slowly lowered it down and lightly began to drum. Tap, 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 tap. And just like that, he started what would soon become the most unforgettable flight of his life. This boy was Malik Johnson, 10 years old. He and his mother were flying on heavily discounted tickets to visit his ailing grandmother in Harlem. It had been a long time since they'd seen her, too long in fact. She was the kind of grandmother you told stories about, full of laughter and loud songs, with hands that could simmer a pot of soup and tap out rhythms on any surface within reach. She used to say that music could heal almost anything, a scraped knee or a heart broken from too many no's. Malik still believed that. Now, sitting in seat 28B, sandwiched between the window and a stranger who smelled faintly of peppermint and impatience, Malik looked every bit the lower deck stowaway of this flight. Hand-me-down jeans with a tear on one cuff, a sweater 2 sizes too big, and scuffed sneakers that had seen better days. He didn't care about fashion, about keeping up, or about pretending he belonged in the part of the plane where people sipped champagne and clinked silver spoons against glass bowls of warm nuts. He belonged here. With his mother, with his thoughts, and with his music. But Malik wasn't the focus of attention, or at least not yet. That title belonged to Ava, a toddler in seat 21C, launching into what could only be described as a level 5 meltdown. She was red-faced, strapped in against her will, arms flailing as she screamed with a pitch that could crack stone. Her young mother, flustered and near tears herself, tried everything: toys, snacks, a tablet, lullabies. Nothing worked. Ava was past the point of return, battling air pressure and exhaustion and the overwhelming confusion of being small and trapped in a silver tube hurtling through the sky at 30,000 feet. The passengers shifted. Some sighed. Some shot angry glances. A few muttered barely concealed criticisms under their breath. About parenting, about noise, about how things used to be. Malik watched quietly. Then he did something no one expected. He reached for the tray table in front of him and gently opened it. The click was almost inaudible beneath Ava's cries. With slow breaths, he placed his palms on the surface, closed his eyes momentarily and began to drum. Just lightly, nothing intrusive. Just a whisper of sound through the cabin. Tap, 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 tap. Then a pause. Tap, 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 tap. The rhythm was soft but intentional, flowing like water over rocks. An intricate pattern, simple enough to follow but layered with subtle shifts and pauses that evoked something deeper. Malik had learned from the best. His grandmother, in moments of stress, whether the electricity had gone out again or there wasn't enough left in the fridge for a real meal, would sit Malik down, make him close his eyes and tap out lullabies or old gospel songs on the kitchen table. They never spoke much during those moments. They didn't need to. The rhythm spoke for itself. Now it traveled to the cabin of Flight 1842. At first no one noticed. Or rather, they noticed the absence of sound. Ava's cries remarkably began to soften. Her sobs slowed to a whimper as her head turned, blinking through tear-glossed eyes, toward the back of the plane. Malik kept going. He didn't look at her. He didn't need to. He just added a subtle hum, matching the beat with a tone that shifted like a lullaby being carried on the wind. A flight attendant, passing by, paused. She tilted her head. She almost smiled. Ava sniffled once. Twice. Then, miraculously, she listened. The other passengers noticed now. Conversations lulled. Phones were lowered. Slowly, gradually, the tension in the cabin began to fade. No one said much, but eyes turned to the boy with magic in his fingers. The toddler, still wide-eyed, stared toward the rhythm, now gently rocking side to side. Her mother gave a smile of stunned relief. The look said everything. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Malik didn't stop drumming until Ava had fully calmed, head resting on her mother's shoulder, the soft rise and fall of sleep taking over her tiny body. And when he did stop, he simply closed the tray table, leaned back in his seat and looked out the window. He didn't need applause. Or recognition. Because sometimes being seen wasn't the point. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness, a quiet rhythm in a noisy world, could be enough to change the course of someone's whole day. And maybe, just maybe, a little boy with scuffed sneakers and music in his soul flew first class after all. Ava paused. Just for a second. Her tiny hands, which had been flapping erratically for nearly 20 minutes, froze mid-air. A passenger 3 rows up glanced back, noticing the sudden silence. Her eyes, still wet with tears, darted around the cabin, searching. She tilted her head, scanning for something beyond the usual chaos of the plane's rumble. Tap, 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 tap. There it was again. A rhythm. Soft and steady, like footsteps on a familiar path. And something layered underneath, a tune. It wasn't a lullaby she recognized, but it felt like one. Warm. Gentle. Like something that could wrap around you and keep out the noise of the world. It was coming from the back of the plane. Her mother, Rachel, noticed the change immediately. Her own body, tensed from stress and desperation, relaxed slightly as Ava's cries subsided. Relief didn't come all at once but in cautious trickles. Was this working? Ava stood up in her seat without warning. Her movements were stiff, uncertain, but deliberate. Some passengers nearby startled, unsure if she was about to launch into another outburst. Rachel quickly unbuckled her seatbelt and stood too, reaching for her daughter's hand, but Ava was already setting off down the aisle, her eyes focused on the boy in 28B. Malik noticed her. He paused, fingers resting gently on the tray table. A moment passed between them, silent but full. Then he started playing again. A little louder this time. His fingers danced in a soft jazz rhythm now, syncopated and warm. His hum came in too, just as soft, just as steady. A fusion of sound and soul. Ava walked slowly, her steps uncoordinated but clear in purpose. She'd found it, the source. The thing that made sense in a world that often didn't. Rachel followed nervously, apologizing under her breath as they passed seated passengers. Her eyes flicked between her daughter and the little boy with the music. She wasn't sure what was happening, but for the first time since takeoff, her daughter wasn't overwhelmed. A flight attendant approached swiftly. Her brow furrowed, voice tight with protocol. "Young man, please stay in your seat." The spell threatened to break. Rachel stepped forward, her voice firm but gentle. "No, wait. Let him continue." The attendant paused, caught in uncertainty. The cabin had quieted. Even the crying baby in a nearby row had settled. Something was happening here, something delicate. Ava now stood just inches in front of Malik. Her face was a picture of pure curiosity, not joy, not sadness, just openness. Wonder. As though she had stumbled on something ancient and sacred. She was looking at him like he was playing the very first song she'd ever understood. Malik looked up, feeling the weight of all those eyes. But they didn't matter. Only hers did. He smiled, tilted his head, and whispered in a voice soft as his hums, "Wanna drum with me?" For a breathless second, no one moved. And then, astonishingly, Ava nodded. Gasps rippled quietly down the aisle. But Malik simply moved to the side of his tray table and gently patted it. An invitation. She climbed into the seat beside him, hesitantly at first, and placed her hands on the plastic. He began again. Tap, tap, tap. She copied him clumsily. Tap, 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 tap. A little offbeat. A little late. But it didn't matter. Their hands moved back and forth, finding a rhythm together, one beat at a time. Malik adjusted his pace to match hers, guiding the flow without ever taking the lead. He let her feel like it was hers too. And just like that, the cabin faded. No turbulence. No constraints. No labels. A millionaire's daughter with sparkly shoes and sensory headphones, and a boy from a small Georgia town wearing second-hand clothes, drumming in harmony. No class. No color. No difference. Just two kids sharing peace in a rhythm only they could hear. The mood on the plane shifted, like someone had opened a window and let in fresh air. Moments ago, the cabin had been a pressure cooker of impatience and tension. Passengers had muttered complaints under their breath and exchanged exasperated glances with every ear-piercing scream from Ava. Some had even pressed their call buttons, eyes pleading for flight attendants to do something. But now, something unexpected was happening, something quietly magical. People began pulling out their phones, but not to post angry rants or air travel gripes. They weren't texting friends or checking the time left on the flight. They were recording. Recording this moment between a boy and a girl who, just half an hour earlier, had been strangers, worlds apart in every sense. Up toward the front of the plane, a man in a business suit turned his phone horizontally and whispered, "This is incredible," as his camera lens captured Malik and Ava drumming together in rhythm, giggling between taps. A college student across the aisle grinned as they typed hastily on their phone. A little boy just calmed an autistic girl mid-meltdown with music. Humanity restored. Even the flight attendants, once skeptical and a little flustered, now looked on with softened eyes. One of them, the same who had scolded Malik earlier, crouched beside his seat after things had calmed. "You've got something special there, sweetheart," she said gently, dropping a small bag of cookies and a juice box on his tray table. "Snacks on us for being today's hero." Malik smiled shyly, murmuring a polite thank you before offering half of his cookies to Ava, who gave a rare and delighted squeal in return. Rachel, who just an hour ago had been on the verge of tears, felt her composure falter again, but this time for a different reason. Hope, relief, gratitude. She knelt beside Malik's mother, who sat quietly reading a worn paperback, trying not to draw attention. "I've never seen her like this," Rachel whispered, her voice cracking. "Not with strangers. And on a plane? This is a first." Malik's mom closed the book, looking up with a knowing smile. Her eyes glistened slightly. "He's always had a way," she said warmly. "Since he was real little. Could hum before he could talk. His grandma says he's got music in his soul." Rachel looked back at the two children. Ava leaned against Malik's shoulder now as if it were the most natural place in the world. They weren't talking much, just exchanging simple gestures. Malik showed her a drumming technique using thumbs and palms. Ava showed him her favorite animal stickers on her tablet. They giggled every time she swiped too fast and a cartoon voice said something silly. Passengers glanced over, not with annoyance but with admiration. A few even clapped quietly after the end of a drumming performance. For the next hour of the flight, the plane felt more like a living room. Cozy, human, connected. Ava remained glued to Malik's side. She offered him one of her crackers, carefully selected and presented with all the seriousness of a royal act. He accepted it graciously. In return, he let her wear one of his foam earbuds, and they listened to soft music from his old MP3 player, each bobbing their heads out of sync but perfectly in tune with each other's joy. Their peace became contagious. An older woman nearby took out her knitting again. Two teens began a conversation about piano lessons. The man in the business suit wiped a tear from his eye and stared out the window thoughtfully. When the seatbelt sign came on for landing and the captain made his final announcement, a few passengers actually groaned, not from the descent but because the moment was ending. Ava gripped Malik's hand tightly when he moved to stow the tray table. "No," she said softly, the only word she'd spoken the whole flight. Her mom looked stunned. Malik looked down at their joined hands. "It's okay," he whispered. "We'll see each other again." She blinked at him, holding his gaze as if trying to memorize his face right there in the dim cabin light. Then, as gently as he had begun his rhythm, she let go. As the plane touched down, hearts landed a little softer too. No one applauded for the safe arrival. They didn't need to. The real applause had already taken place in the back of that plane, in a quiet symphony of fingers and heartbeats tapped out between two unlikely friends. And for a little while, up in the clouds, it hadn't mattered who had how much or came from where. Only that connection is possible, sometimes sparked by rhythm, sometimes by empathy, but always, always by love. Once Flight 1842 landed at LaGuardia, something remarkable happened. Instead of the usual awkward shuffle into the aisle, the anxious push toward the exit, passengers on board did something different. Something beautiful. They cheered. They clapped, not just for the pilot's smooth landing, but for what they had just witnessed during the last 2 hours in the air. Applause broke out, spontaneous and sincere. Some even wiped tears from their eyes. Others stood and waited, not to disembark first but just to say thank you. As Malik and his mother gathered their bags, passengers stopped them. One offered Malik a firm handshake and said, "You've got a gift, son. Don't ever lose it." Another woman leaned in, whispering to Malik's mom, "He changed all our hearts today." Rachel received her own flood of kindness. A tech executive handed her a pristine white business card. "You're an amazing mom," she told her, choking up. "If you ever need anything, support, advocacy, connections for therapy, call me." Seriously. Rachel, overwhelmed but glowing, nodded gratefully. But the biggest moment, the one Malik would remember for the rest of his life, came after the plane was empty, bags were collected, and the crowd dispersed into the arrival hall. Standing near the baggage carousel, wearing a tailored coat and a face lined with concern, was Jonathan Whitmore, one of the wealthiest men on the East Coast, father of Ava, CEO of a venture capital firm, and guest speaker at education summits nationwide. He had no idea what had unfolded in the sky while he waited on the ground. When he first spotted Ava and Rachel, he broke into a relieved smile. But his expression quickly changed as he noticed Ava, holding hands with a boy. A boy in worn jeans, slightly crooked glasses and second-hand sneakers. Jonathan's gaze flicked from Malik to Rachel, eyebrows raised in polite curiosity. Before he could calculate what was going on, Ava ran toward him and, to his astonishment, paused, then pulled Malik right behind her. Quietly, almost reverently, Jonathan crouched down to Ava's level. She tugged on his sleeve once and simply said, "Music." Jonathan blinked. "Music?" he asked, his voice soft. She nodded and pointed to Malik. Rachel stepped in, her voice steady despite her emotions. She had a meltdown, John. It was bad. Nothing I tried worked. But then he played. Just his fingers on a tray table. Humming. I don't know how to explain it, he calmed her. A beat passed. Then Jonathan turned to Malik, who stood silently, not sure what was expected of him. Jonathan got down on one knee. He looked at the boy, really looked at him, as if trying to see not just who he was but what he had done. His eyes softened. You gave my daughter something money can't buy, he said, his tone humble, almost reverent. You gave her peace. Malik blinked, unsure how to respond. He shifted awkwardly and offered a small shrug. Jonathan smiled. That's enough, he said quietly, as if any words would only make it smaller. Then, without saying anything more, he reached into the inner pocket of his overcoat and handed Malik's mother a small ivory-colored envelope. We'll be in touch, he said. A few days later, back in their small Georgia town, a letter arrived. There was no signature, no logo, just a simple note that read, Keep sharing his gift. The world needs it. Attached was a donation large enough to cover years of music education. Private lessons, instruments, technology, even travel for performances if needed. Malik's mother couldn't believe it. She read the letter 3 times, hand over her heart. Today Malik plays piano and gem and he's learning guitar. He performs at school assemblies, local libraries, and centers for children with special needs. His favorite part? When the kids join in, clapping, humming, tapping along. He tells them, music helps me feel calm. I hope it does the same for you. He also has a YouTube channel now, run by his mom and supported by a few kind adults who believe in him. On it, he shares calming music, guided rhythms, and personalized melodies designed to soothe kids like Ava. Kids whose minds run in beautiful patterns the rest of the world sometimes doesn't understand. As for Ava, they still zoom from time to time. No script. No pressure. Just the sound of 2 kids, drumming on tablet screens and laughing across the miles. From Harlem to Georgia, they're separated by hundreds of miles, but forever connected by a shared rhythm no one else can hear quite the same way. And when Malik signs off, he always waves at her and says, play you later. Ava always responds the same way, grinning, drum you later. So yes, it started with a scream. But it ended with a friendship the world almost didn't see, unless one boy from humble beginnings hadn't followed his heart. Because sometimes, the smallest gestures create the biggest miracles. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more inspiring stories every week.